Hello everyone, I am Jim. I want to talk to you about human rights issues in China today. The non-governmental organization, Chinese Human Rights Defenders, CHRD, published a report on Wednesday, March 5 titled, Waiting for Dawn in a Cell, Arbitrary Detention in China May Constitute a Crime Against Humanity. The content shows that over the past 6 years, Chinese authorities have arbitrarily detained thousands of people on a large scale, of which at least 1,545 were sentenced to prison for peacefully expressing their opinions or exercising their human rights. The report believes that the widespread and systematic nature of this behavior may constitute a crime against humanity. Sophie Richardson, co-executive director of Human Rights Defenders, said, "Every link in China's criminal justice system, from police, prosecutors to courts, uses unfounded charges to illegally detain people, which is a clear violation of the Chinese government's domestic and international human rights obligations." Quote, the report pointed out that the average sentence of prisoners of conscience sentenced between 2019 and 2024 was as long as 6 years, while the average sentence for those involved in the so-called crime of endangering national security rose to 7 years. Tashpola Tiyip, a famous Uyghur geographer and former president of Xinjiang University, Sitar Sawat, a politician in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, and Yang Hengjun, an Australian Chinese writer, were all sentenced to death, with some of their sentences suspended. In addition, Rahil Dawat, a well-known Uyghur scholar, and Abdurazak Shayam, former vice president of the Xinjiang Academy of Social Sciences, were sentenced to death. Sayam were sentenced to life imprisonment. There are also 48 prisoners of conscience serving sentences of 10 years or more. The report also highlights that women and members of marginalized groups, including Tibetans and Uyghurs, are overrepresented among prisoners of conscience. Among the more than 700 elderly prisoners of conscience over the age of 60, 2/3 are women. Other data show that in Hong Kong, the number of people convicted of subversion of state power and conspiracy to subvert state power is even higher than in mainland China. CHRD researcher Shane Yi told VOA that even after serving their sentences, prisoners of conscience in China continue to be deprived of their freedom and political rights. During this period, although they were released, they had no freedom of expression and could not tell their own experiences. The police would warn them not to speak or be interviewed, which was like going from a small prison to a big prison. And even if they were not sentenced to deprivation of political rights, their assets might be frozen for no reason or subjected to various forms of surveillance and harassment, just to make your life difficult. Convictions are broad and vague. The report said that the Chinese government often uses charges such as picking quarrels and provoking trouble, organizing and using cult organizations to undermine the law, and endangering national security to suppress dissidents and religious believers. Among them, picking quarrels and provoking trouble is considered too broad and vague, while charges such as endangering national security reflect that the Chinese government uses the judicial system as a tool for political oppression. The report emphasizes, these arbitrary detentions occurred across the country, which shows the widespread and systematic nature of these violations. Human rights defenders pointed out that the Beijing authorities' comprehensive crackdown on human rights activists has not only affected China, but also has far-reaching effects on the international community. Whether it is promoting reform, holding the government accountable, paying attention to issues such as women's rights, labor rights, religious freedom or public health, when these people are imprisoned or silenced for their advocacy activities, the global community will lose a key source of information, affecting the understanding of China's human rights situation and weakening the global human rights promotion force. The report also criticized that Chinese government officials generally enjoy impunity treatment at home, which allows them to continue to violate human rights internationally without taking responsibility. Richardson said, "Two different UN agencies have expressed concerns that the Beijing authorities may be committing the most serious crime in international law, crimes against humanity." She called on governments and the United Nations that are concerned about this matter to redouble their efforts to investigate all serious crimes in China and hold them accountable. The issue of human rights persecution in China is a deeply disturbing reality that has long been widely criticized by the international community. In my opinion, this issue is not only about the injustice suffered by individuals, but also exposes a system's systematic disregard for freedom, dignity and humanity. First of all, freedom of speech is almost impossible to talk about in China. Countless cases show that citizens have been imprisoned, censored or even forced to disappear for expressing dissent, criticizing the status quo or revealing the truth. This repression deprives people of their basic rights and deprives society of the opportunity to make progress through open dialogue. Secondly, religious freedom and the rights of ethnic minorities are particularly seriously violated. For example, the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities face charges of mass detention, cultural cleansing, and forced labor, which constitute blatant violations of human rights. In addition, the opacity and lack of independence of the judicial system prevent many people from obtaining a fair trial, and even torture or inhumane treatment in the legal process. I believe that human rights should not be sacrificed for any reason. Neither the so-called national stability nor economic development can cover up the fact that basic human rights have been violated. Human rights are universal and are not discounted by region or political system. China's human rights persecution has not only damaged the lives of countless individuals, but also weakened its moral credibility globally. In short, I am strongly critical of the current human rights situation in China, and I hope that the international community will continue to pay attention to this issue and promote change.